going on, guys? West Virginia Ghost Hunters here. We're inside the West Virginia Penitentiary right now. We're going to do a tour of the place. It's like an hour and a half tour. Right now we are looking at all the facts and
everything
stuff at the museum. Yeah, we'll show you some of that. These are all the men that were executed. 94. These were the famous prison riots in this prison.
Right here was the most famous one.
I'm only talking quiet because there's other people in here. These are famous movies made inside the prison.
Imagine that whip going across your back.
Heck no, I can't imagine that. That would hurt. Man,
None of them trees are there no more.
That was the old Jefferson Avenue, Dave.
Huh? Yeah. My grandma was only 10 years old, 5 years old when that was taken.
1910.
Grandma was born in 1905. Grandma died.
They actually had gospel singers in here.
Yeah. They used to sell all this stuff.
Them look like
Purses.
they're like mail pouches.
Mm-hmm. Dina? Is this made for someone?
They spelled theft wrong.
What they spell?
Theft. Thief, unless it's a city in Parkersburg. Look at these, look at these.
Ow.
This thing right here is a famous thing known in this prison. The letter to the warden from Charles Manson himself. Right there. These are all things made.
We're gonna have Jason as our tour guide.
I don't know if you guys can hear me in the background, but Jason from Paranormal Quest is going to be our tour guide.
Pretty sure that's what he just said before. Oh my god. This is nuts.
I know.
The throat cutter.
Alright guys, we'll come back to you as soon as the tour starts.
My name's Jason, Bureau's guide. If you have any questions today, please feel free to ask me. Take all the photos, videos you like. Strongly encourage you to take photos. Any of y'all been here before? Hey, welcome back, welcome back. Now, have y'all toured any other prison like Alcatraz, Mansfield Reformatory, Eastern State Penitentiary? Which one was that?
Alcatraz and Eastern State, Pennsylvania.
No kidding, okay, awesome. Alcatraz and ESP.
Eastern State
In Mansfield, okay, Shawshank territory, very nice, all right. Well, this prison, this was a maximum security state prison for West Virginia for 129 years. It opened in 1866, stayed open until March 27, 1995. Now, when it closed 26 years ago, this was still home to 652 of the most violent inmates of West Virginia. About 1 in 3 had a life sentence, whether that was with or without parole. Most of these guys will be sent to a place called Mount Olive Correctional Complex. It's in Fayette County, southern West Virginia. It's maximum security. Not too far out of Charleston. Ironically, some of these guys never left Moundsville. Over on 12th Street is a modern maximum security state prison. It's called Northern Regional Correctional Center and Jail. So if you hear me mention Mount Olive or Northern, just keep in mind that's where these guys were all transferred to. Now, where we're starting your tour officially here was non-contact visitation. You all are sitting right where inmates would have sat. Their visitors, of course, used the horseshoe-shaped hallway. They started out talking through the grates. Until in the mid-'80s, they realized some visitors were bringing dollar bills in here that they would coat with liquid LSD. And they rolled those dollar bills up so small and tight, they could be passed through the holes and given to the inmates. So you won't be able to see through the grates now because they still sealed them off with panels. But after that is when they put telephones in, which wouldn't just prevent smuggling of contraband, but it would provide them with more privacy with their loved ones in here. Of course, coming into the lobby, it's pretty hard to miss old Sparky behind me. This is a real electric chair. West Virginia had the death penalty in effect at least until 1965, once capital punishment was abolished. They have yet to reinstate capital punishment here, but they had 94 total executions, 85 hangings, and 9 electrocutions. Now, the chair itself was built by a guy named Paul Glenn in 1950. Strangely enough, Paul Glenn wasn't just a carpenter, but he was an inmate here. For some reason or another, after Paul finished building Old Sparky, he wasn't too popular in here, so they had to transfer him shortly thereafter to a different prison for his safety. If you've seen the Green Mile, you have a decent idea what something like that would look like. We have this here now for display. The controls, the late state phone, all of this would have been in the execution chamber in the death house. Now that building was torn out in '67, but here later I'll show you where that building once stood. Now, we'll see a lot of awesome, beautiful artwork today. It's all done by the inmates here. Some of these guys are brilliantly talented. It's a shame they had to waste their talent, but you may notice the painting in the hallway of the New River Gorge Bridge. It's down in Fayetteville, West Virginia. Beautiful part of the state you ever get a chance to see. It's actually my hometown, but it recently became America's newest national park also, by the way. But that painting was done by Danny Spider Lehman. He was known as Spider here. He had 2 life sentences for armed robbery and murder, but Danny was a gang leader in here. He ran a biker gang known as the Avengers, and they pretty much controlled the prison in the 70s and 80s until 1986. The Aryan Brotherhood took over the penitentiary. Now, as a result of that violent power struggle, unfortunately, Danny and some of his buddies lost their lives. Danny was murdered by the rival gang in the fall of '86 in North Hall. But definitely remember Danny Spider Lehman, because I'll be telling you about him again later when we're in the medical floor. He painted all the paintings up there. So out here we have a framed photo of him so you can have a face to a name. But I'm sure you're very well aware, you're here for a very special day for tours. We call these History Mystery Tours. It's going to be a fast-paced tour because, in addition to everywhere I show people most of the week, we get to go to 3 extra spots here in the prison. So I will tell you about some of the history, some of the operational history, but there'll be some things I have to skip over just because I always like to recall Gene Wilder and Willy Wonka when he says, little to see, too much time. Strike it, reverse it. So a lot to see, not a whole lot of time to see it. So, but again, if you see something you're curious about I don't mention, or want to know something about the history here, just feel free to ask me anytime. So take us around 90 minutes or so. It'll be about a mile and a half walking tour. Now will be your opportune time for the restrooms if need be. But without further ado, with that said, if you folks are ready, we'll officially enter the penitentiary.
All right. Yeah. Yep.
Hey, there he is. What's up, Jason?
Hey, I'm cool.
Doing great, man. How are you?
Not too bad.
Actually, see.
I said, buddy may come in here for a tour. I said, maybe just in time, so I was glad you made it.
Yeah,
Were y'all in town for?
we got training with Richard.
Oh, really? So you've been here all day?
Long videos.
Showing new guy around.
There you go. Heck yeah. How are y'all doing there?
Good to see you, man.
Hey, not too bad. Hello there. My name's Jason. If y'all have any questions, please take all the photos, videos you like, things like that. You're standing in Main Street. This is the main corridor of the penitentiary. Connects the south end, the new end of the prison, to the north end behind me. That's the oldest half. Now, the inmates, the first 100 or so guys that arrived here from 1866 to 1899, they built the north end. It took them, again, 33 years. Every single block of sandstone was cut, beveled, and laid by hand. I guess they're going to do their own thing. But they built the north end for 800 guys. Problem was, it was in the 20s, 30s, and 40s. They ended up with 2,700 guys. Very, very overcrowded and overpopulated. So that's why they built South Hall, where you're standing now. From that wall south, this was built by contractors from 1929 to 1950. We'll make a little on the north end, we'll wind it down here after a while. Final stop will be down in New Walk below. You notice that was general population housing unit, that was main line. So basically, if you hear me mention general population or main line, that's run-of-the-mill convicts. Most of the guys here, they're still murderers, car thieves, and burglars. But these guys are trying to do their time the right way. Now, if they got into enough trouble here, they would leave general population and go to a place called North Hall. That was the administrative segregation, and that was basically the jail for this prison. Inmates in North Hall were locked down 22 and a half hours a day. So, but other than that, if you had to come to prison, you would much prefer to be in general population. So, when you go around the corner up here behind me, do watch your step. There's a little rise in the floor up here.
Yeah, Dave, don't fall.
Yeah, you're trying to be there in the dark.
This is where a gunman sat, right in here. They said if they went out of that line back here,
Yeah.
boom, busted them. North Hall, there it is.
Back again.
I might remember that.
Yep. I do.
This was contact visitation, so inmates were allowed one hug and kiss at the door with their visitors. They would come over, they used to have big tables in here, they would sit down across from their visitors, and they were allowed to hold their hands for the remainder of the 1 hour visit. That's really the extent of what was allowed. I'm asked very commonly if they allowed conjugal visits here, and they did not. What I will say about that, the bathrooms behind me, it was not uncommon for an inmate to have his buddy distract an officer long enough to go in there with a female visitor. To give you a better idea, one inmate here, his name is Jesse. During his incarceration, he fathered 3 children here. But other than that, not too much to see or to say. So, but since a lot of women and children would spend time in here, that's why you can tell the artwork reflects that. The inmates wanted this to be a nice gesture for the kids who were frightened by the visitation process. Matter of fact, one of the guys that painted this room, his name was Sean Adamy. He was colorblind. So I'm blaming him for the turtles. That's why Raphael and Leonardo are wearing each other's sashes, and they're holding the wrong weapons in their hands.
Yeah, we didn't know something.
I just realized that.
Now, in 1987, Dale Bragg was a convicted murderer with a life sentence, and he made the papier-mâché display for the Indian Museum across the street. That is the ancient Adena people, and they were mound builders here in the Ohio Valley. Matter of fact, the Grave Creek Mound across the street is the largest one of its kind in this part of the world. It's a little over 70 feet tall. About 20 years ago or so, there were 2 nights members of the U.S. Marines were in here training with night vision goggles. I don't know what one of the Marines was doing in the display, but the little boy caught him off guard, and in the darkness, he spun around. The butt of his rifle took the face clean off the Indian.
Ooh.
So, the West Virginia Divisions of Correction and Rehabilitation still own the penitentiary, and because of that as well, they host a lot of training in here, mostly corrections and law enforcement training, but on occasion we do get military. So, if you see any signs that say live ammo hazard, that's just here relative to the training. Also, if you see any cameras, security cameras in the prison, those are all been installed to monitor training. But they had no cameras here when it was open, so just to keep that in mind. So far, do you have any questions?
No?
All right, now right behind me in front of the painting of the chimney, there's a little pipe on the floor. Just watch this so you don't trip.
I would definitely feel the heat here. It didn't feel like this last time. Yeah. Shadow Man hallway.
Now, when the prison was open, this was known as the MDR main dining room hallway. In the middle, you had a maintenance room, a storage area. And here, this is the state shop where their clothing and bedding were stored. If an inmate got here with lice, they'd be lousing them in there as well, oddly enough, near their clothing and bedding. But nonetheless, if after they got here they needed new shoes or clothing or bedding, they could get those items through the little window right there. I heard someone mention something about Shadow Man. That's actually taken by a good friend of mine. Polly Gear is her name. She was staying the night here in May of '04. It's around midnight or so. She's in the hallway heading down towards the lobby. She gets about halfway down. She heard a metallic sound behind her. When Polly turned around, right in front of the cafeteria door, she seen a solid black shadow standing there, kind of looking her direction. Now, she had a flashlight, and when she shined it down there, she said it seemed a little bit transparent. But what was stranger is it appeared to acknowledge the light because it kind of looked down, looked back up at her. As she continues walking backwards, and she had a Sony Mavic camera. She raised it and took one photograph, and she captured what she was looking at that we call the Shadow Man. We have a photo of it in the museum if you've yet to see it, or very simple Google image search. West Virginia Shadow Man will yield dozens of results of that photograph. A little before her visit, 1999, MTV was here. They filmed a pilot episode of a show called Fear. It's been off air for many moons. You can find our episode of Fear on YouTube, but that's really what helped get us recognized nationally as being a haunted or supernaturally active area here in the country. So ever since their visit, you name a TV show, we've had them all. So all the ghost adventures, all the ghost hunters and paranormal states and all that. So that's pretty popular for those folks. But the first group of inmates that would have came up here would have been about 100 to 150 of them. First round of breakfast was 6:30 in the morning.
What's that?
No.
These guys would come in, they would actually form a pill line right there. In the gun room, you'd have an armed CO and a nurse and another CO outside to help the nurse make sure them guys are swallowing the medicine, not hiding it under their tongue. That's called pocketing or cheeking. One inmate was so desperate, he would actually take his state-issued razor blade, cut the insides of his mouth on either side, put pencil erasers into the cuts. A week or two later, they heal. He pops the erasers out. Then he had pouches in his mouth big enough to hide pills in. So narcotics, always big trouble here. A lot of big problems in the prison with drugs.
What?
The inmates would come in, they'd get a fork and spoon, actual silverware near the soup and salad bar. They split up on either one of the chow lines behind me. The one on your left was front of the middle chow line. Over there, that was diet lines, diabetic, Muslim, and Hindu inmates, people like that. They would speak to one of the 20 or so trusting inmates that worked the kitchen, telling them what they wanted to eat. They'd get their trays right in the middle. They'd go through those lines one time and get whatever they liked, but they could help themselves as much as they wanted to the soup, salad, and fruit from the bar there. When they were finished eating, they would get up and take their trays to the far windows at either side. That was where the dishwashers were located. And then they basically formed a line on the way out. They collected silverware at the door. They had an officer with a fork pan and spoon pan watching that closely, and then they would count each piece, making sure that they had them accounted for, and then they could allow everyone to leave. Just like the fork shank in our museum, you can see how nasty of a weapon that could be turned into. So, you can still see where the tables used to be mounted. They were stainless steel, bolted to the floors. The seats were bolted to the tables. They fed roughly as many as 150 every 30 minutes, half a cell block at a time. Now, these tables have since been repurposed down at Mount Olive at the new prison in Fayette County. I will admit, though, the dining hall itself and kitchen only served the prison during the last 8 years of operation. This was the main result of the most violent riot in the state's history, and that was the New Year's Day riot of 1986. It lasted 52 hours, 16 hostages were taken, and 3 inmates who were considered snitches were brutally murdered. The problem was, these inmates had been promised change by the state for years with little to no action. So this was kind of the boiling point. They rioted for 52 hours, as I said. They did come up with a list of 15 demands of things they would like to see done or changed. And after Governor Arch Moore got here and negotiated for a few hours, they only agreed on one of their 15 demands, which would be this: new dining hall inmates wanted to be built to replace their old dining hall. See, the old dining hall where the riot began was one of the most troublesome areas in this place in terms of conditions. It wasn't uncommon inmates in here or in the old dining hall eating, and a rat the size of a small cat or small dog would jump on the table and scurry across the trays. Inmates that worked the old kitchen were never given hairnets or gloves, so they're eating other men's fingernails and hair. Cockroaches in the mashed potatoes, a lot of stories. And no AC, no heat on top of that year round. So Governor Moore signed an executive order granting them a dining hall with AC and heat that they wanted, cleaner conditions, and better food quality. And they sure got it. These guys had nothing to complain about during the last 8 years this was open because they ate very well. Pork chops, hamburgers, hot dogs, chicken wings, pizza, one steak dinner one day of the month for each inmate. Thanksgiving time, the freezers would be full of about 200 turkeys ready for Thanksgiving dinner. So wasn't half bad. Now, the guys that worked that kitchen were trustees. They prepared, cooked, and served the food. They done everything. When they weren't pouring mercury into the coffee, it was pretty tasty. But other than the coffee, you really had nothing to worry about. They kind of policed themselves back there. Matter of fact, over behind that wall in the corners where officers and staff would eat their food, and it was the same food the inmates would serve them. So they seen it as a bargain. All they had to pay was $1.05 plus tax, and they could eat their food. But they ate behind the wall, that way they weren't in open view of the inmates over here, that way they're not staring each other down. That would only add to the tension, you know, maybe start a fight or worse, so they're just kind of back there hidden. In here you will see some of those cameras I told you about. Actually in here we have microphones dropping down, so if you see any more of those today, just pay no attention to them. But so far, do y'all have any questions? All right. We'll get ready to head over to the north yard out here. Well, you know, you would think,
See what you want to do?
but, I mean, I know that sometimes they did end up walking out with them, you know, but the problem was inmates that were in protected custody and in segregation, they were fed plasticware, and to be honest, inmates could take a plastic knife and file it like a needle, and they could stab you with a plastic knife too, so, crazy, I mean, just, you know, crazy stuff. I mean, you know. Oh, yes. They can make weapons out of toilet paper. You know, it's just crazy. You know, newspapers. And, oh, yeah.
We had 9,500
Really? 9,500.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Gosh.
Yeah, we had 9,500.
I see our D's room.
Yep. That's all they have.
Well, thank you for your service. Sure enough. Yeah, that's the abundance of time. It's crazy what humans can come up with.
Yeah. That's all they have time to think.
Mm-hmm.
Good.
Yeah, it's kind of scary sometimes to think about.
Oh, yeah.
You know,
If
so.
they wouldn't apply themselves, they wouldn't be in that situation.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Beautiful structure.
Here on the north yard, over in the distance, you'll see the north wagon gate. Looks kind of like a church steeple, but that was the original prison where the first 100 or so guys were housed, and they were the ones that built this site. It took them 33 years. They worked nonstop, night and day in shifts. Again, cutting, beveling, and laying every block of sandstone by hand. They actually loosely modeled this prison after a sister prison up in Illinois. It's called Joliet Correctional. If you've seen Blues Brothers with Dan Aykroyd and John Belushi, Jake picks Elwood up from Joliet. Joliet and Moundsville are beautiful examples of Gothic revival style of architecture resembling a castle with the battlements and turrets. You know, back in a time of the world when they wanted a place like this to look very, very uninviting, very evil, as opposed to now where they all look the same. They're not quite as frightening looking. So. Tallest part of the prison was the administration building. Third and fourth floor would have been the home of the warden and his families till 1960. State law required them to live on site up there. He raised his kids and everybody. I know one of the wardens would allow a trustee inmate to take his kids to Sunday church and bring them back to him. So talk about being trusted, probably wouldn't fly in today's world. Second floor would have been administrative offices during that time. They wanted to come out on the second floor balcony, talk to the inmates on the yard. They'd be protected by any projectiles they'd throw at them with that fence that kind of surrounded them. The first floor in the basement, we'll be strolling through there later, so I'll kind of hold off on that until we're in there here just a little bit later. The metal blue building behind me was built in the early 70s, and that was their industries building. They had couple hundred inmates that had jobs in factory workshops in there, and everything from welding to electrical, woodworking, photography, automotive. They converted books to Braille, they binded books, and they made license plates and highway signs in there. Y'all may have noticed in our museum we have a 1982 license plate. It's a little bit yellow. Well, they had a lot of yellow plates manufactured here in '82 because the inmates were peeing in the paint. And the reason they were doing that was they knew the ammonia in their urine, when it went into the plate, it would cause it gradually to crack and peel. Well, them guys made piecework. So in their mind, they're thinking, well, the more P plates we make, the more new plates we'll have to make and make more money that way. So it was like job security for them.
Yeah.
So leave it to the inmates to come up with something nutty like that. Nowadays, the DOC, they have some offices in there. They actually install the electronics on their vehicles here. That's why you see a lot of their state prison vehicles here. The rest of that building is our event center. If y'all are ever looking for a venue to host any kind of gathering, it could be birthday party, family or class reunion, or my favorite, a wedding, just give us a call. Usually every year we have one or two couples that wants to get married inside the prison walls, but when you really think about it, what better place are you going to receive your life sentence?
You got a point.
Yeah.
But hey, here's the great difference, right? It can be hopefully a happy life sentence. So that's,
Yeah.
There's always time for ball and chain in life, though. That's for sure.
Yeah.
So. But now you will notice the base of the walls are painted white. In 1980, the inmates started wearing khaki uniforms, and they pretty much camouflaged into the sandstone. So a little bit of a problem. In 129 years, they had over 500 escapes from here. They got them all back but two, thankfully. But they had way too much time. They planned anything. Numerous tunnel escapes, numerous times guys would jump in a truck and steal it and crash out of a gate. One guy escaped in the back of a cement mixer. In 1994, they had two inmates try and scale the 26-foot high walls with ropes that they braided from their dental floss. Crazy stuff. They were wondering why inmates hadn't been flossing for a
measure how
while.
long that
Well,
took?
there you go.
Then they dug the tunnel.
Yes, yes. Numerous tunnels over the years, matter of
Yes.
fact. The last successful escape was in 1992 in February. And right in front of the flagpole over there used to be a greenhouse. And that greenhouse was always worked by trustee inmates, but in 91 and 92, it was 3 convicted killers who were trusted to work that greenhouse totally unsupervised. Tommy Mullahan, Freddie Hamilton, and David Williams. It took them over 1 year, at least, to dig an escape tunnel that started in the greenhouse. They dug between 16 to 18 feet deep, stretched 50, 60 feet over to the other side of the east wall. Now, they had a string of lights in that tunnel, keeping it well lit while they're digging. They had fans at either end, keeping them cool while they're, when they're working. They spared no effort in building their own escape tunnel. They took their time on it. Now, to give you an idea how much earth was actually moved in order to construct the tunnel, after all was said and done, it took 3 cement trucks full to fill that tunnel in. In fact, the warden at the time, Carl Legursky, said that the tunnel was so well made that if they wanted to, they could have walked every inmate of this prison out through that same tunnel. Collectively, they got the 3 guys back here to the penitentiary within a couple months, but I always say they get points for trying, because think of all that dirt that they're removing. What are they doing with it? Well, they knew they weren't flushing it. So you know how you could buy like fresh produce and stuff on these big cardboard flats? They would take a big cardboard flat the same size, put 6 or 7 different flower pots on it. They were planting flowers in the dirt from the tunnel, and they would give everyone that worked here each a big flat of flowers, and they'd give it to them with a warm smile. Here, take this to your family, And they're thinking, wow, these guys are really taking pride in their job, right? So the minister out here at the church at 8th and Jefferson actually donated 500 or 600 pots for them to keep planting. So they had the warden and the whole town helping them dispose their evidence.
Yep.
So yeah,
Smart guys.
again, smart.
Smart guys.
Very clever.
Yes, they was.
So, matter of fact, if after the tour, if you drive over on the east side along Washington Avenue, if you go and stand on the north side of that tower and you kind of stomp around, you can still feel where the concrete is. So, wacky stuff. left-hand side, this is bullpens, what we call bullpens. We're going to use our imagination for a second and picture these gone, and in the same spot, a 2-story red brick building, and that would have been the death house. Built in 1899, execution chamber and the death cells were on the first floor, along with upstairs they had a room for the chaplain and officers, and a separate medical wing for inmates with TB, smallpox, diphtheria, and influenza. Now, in the death house, of course, is where all those executions took place, and until 1931, you could come here on the day of a hanging, bring your family, pay $2 a person, and you could go in and watch them execute them. It was seen as like family entertainment. And they would advertise the hangings in the local Moundsville paper, and this was the exact wording. They would say, pack a picnic, bring your family to the state penitentiary, enjoy a nice hanging. And they would do that until 1931. They executed Frank Heyer. Now, Frank was the biggest guy they ever hanged here. Real big bone, tall, broad-shouldered man. Now, when they go to hang an inmate, they measure that rope based on the inmate's height and weight. But because Frank was a big guy, it gave more room for error. Turns out his rope was too long. Allowed him to gain too much momentum. So when those drop doors opened, he instantly decapitated, and his head landed in the feet of some of the kids watching up front.
Oh, God.
Another lesson learned the hard way here. After that, the warden made it invitation only. So later on, when they abolished capital punishment in 65, no longer had a purpose for the death house. They tore it out in 67, a couple of years later after hearing the inmates complain about the eyesore out here. So the bullpens were built around 1969, 1970, and these were rec yards for the North Hall housing unit. And as I said earlier, North Hall was worst of the worst. Not just here in Moundsville, but all the other state prisons here in West Virginia would send their troublemakers here to spend their segregated time in North Hall. There's 160 cells in there, spread out over 4 tiers and 2 cell blocks. Those cells are 5 foot by 7 foot by 7 foot. They were locked down 22.5 hours a day. They had 1 hour outside, take them back in, give them a shower, and then put them back in their cells until the next day. Now, originally this razor wire wasn't up here. Matter of fact, right here you can see there used to be a telephone booth there, and originally it was just a little bit of measly barbed wire. That was it. Well, the Franklin brothers, known troublemakers, one day the Franklin brothers, Warren and Charles, they came out here, and I don't know where they thought they were going, but they jumped on the telephone booth and climbed out of the yard and went running somewhere in here. Well, another lesson learned the hard way. That's when they took the telephone booth out and they put this concertina up in 1987. So it's very deceiving because it's so shiny, but that is stainless steel, military grade. And that's the real McCoy. So it's designed to bleed you out. And high tensile wire. And it's installed, I believe it's about 50-foot long swaths or so at a time.
So, like a slinky.
Like a big accordion or something, and under a lot of pressure. So if you were to snip it or cut it, it's going to sling back, and it's nasty stuff. But very formidable barrier. So.
Jesus.
We're going to more or less just kind of walk around the bullpens and get closer towards the upper North Hall door there.
Oh, this is some crazy stuff, man.
Very interesting.
Yeah. 3.5. That's when we came last time.
We never toured it before we ghost hunted it.
Huh?
So we never toured it and ghost hunted it.
I know.
The inmates, they called North Hall the Alamo. They said it was their last stand. Reason for that is because a lot of the guys in North Hall were lifers and felt they had nothing to lose, and there was nothing many of them would not do to themselves or to someone else. When we go in, you're going to see the first 4 cells are separate from the rest of everyone in there. Those were deemed the 4 most violent of the penitentiary, and they were mostly high-ranking gang members of the Aryan Brotherhood. Now, when you go in, the first cell you're going to see was home to the leader of the AB, William Red Snyder. He was from Weston, West Virginia. He murdered his father and the father of his sister's boyfriend. When he got here, he killed 3 inmates himself. He was very feared and respected, though, amongst the inmates because they wanted to stay on Red's good side. Red would literally tell the COs, he would say, don't get in my way, we'll get along just fine, but if there's an inmate here that gives you trouble, tell me who they are, give me some cigarettes, and I'll kill them for you.
Jeez.
That's what he would tell correctional officers. So, 2 cells down from Red was his good buddy, Rusty Lassiter, and Rusty was in for grand larceny. Red and Rusty were the only 2 of those 4 guys allowed on this yard together for about 5 years or so. The problem was, even though Red and Rusty were good friends, Rusty was subservient to another high-ranking member. His name was Elijah Blue Sarton, better known as Blue. He was Blue's boy, his punk, which meant he had to do anything you want him to in here. Now, Blue was jealous of Red. He wanted to become the new the gang leader, the king of the hill in here. Well, I guess he didn't have the heart to face Red himself. So Rusty basically ended up getting the order to take his buddy Red out. Red's murder took place in the afternoon, November 16, 1992. They had it set up to where just before they would come out, Red would be basically in possession of Valiums because they knew he loved pills and he got high on them, sure enough. Well, they popped Red and Rusty's doors. Rusty comes out, he goes up, he looks in and asks Red 3 times if he's ready to go to the yard with him, but when he realized that him sitting on his bunk, he was high off Valium and he's just moving in slow motion, he was defenseless. He ran in there and he did stab him 37 times in his upper chest, face, and neck, caused him to actually asphyxiate. I understand last time he was stabbed, it was right here, so pretty nasty. Of course, no murder in a place like this is knock him in the head and call it a day. It's always to make a statement kind of murder, so it's always overkill. Brutal slashings, decapitations, things like that. So, but he passed away below his bunk, matter of fact. So we do consider him an active resident.
Oh, yeah.
And I'll leave it at that. But yeah, he's definitely around, I think. But again, his cell is the first one you're going to come up on when we go in here. And then Rusty, the guy who killed him, was 2 cells down. So just remember that there is low clearance with the ceiling in here, so just kind of keep that in mind and watch your step.
I remember good old Red.
Yeah, we were with Jason back in April, and the EMF and everything was all going nuts right in here.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah, EMF, Ovulus, a bunch of other things were going all at the same time, and it was just going wild.
Yeah, he's pretty vocal. Sometimes more so than others, but yeah, it's.
Then I was sitting in here. I can't remember what I said, but all I hear is some female voice say, "You lied to me."
Really?
Yeah.
Oh wow, that's not weird at all. That's strange. Yep. Yeah, you never know what you get in this place. It's a weird.
Oh, it's
place.
crazy. We're coming back the 28th when they're back here.
Oh, okay. Yep. Yeah, I'll probably see you again because I'm going to be working that night. So. Yep.
Get in there, Dave.
Cracking the block, boss.
Imagine going 30 years longer.
I need to ask you something. Is
What?
this the one?
Yep.
Not just the isolation, you don't walk
I think I remember that was at night. Could you imagine
I cannot live in one of these. Just now.
going like 30 years, only get out like 23 hours a day?
Oh yeah. Yeah, it's very, very cut and dry. Just kind of like I heard an inmate
You
one
guys see
time
this one?
explain that said out on the street if you don't pay your bills they take your house and here they take your life.
No fence right. No, there's black or white, there's no fence right. Yeah, you know exactly.
This is where you and Marshall were.
Yep. It's crazy. I can't even imagine. I can't even imagine. Ooh.
6 years, 12.5 hours a day.
Here's Rusty's.
Don't laugh at me.
That's Rusty's.
That's when I was in years. You guys laughed at me.
Yep.
I'm gonna tell you right now, buddy. I'll be back August 28th. I'm gonna come sit right in here with you and we're gonna have a conversation.
And I've heard even too that, you know, some weeks, depending on what happened, that it wasn't always 1 hour outside every day. You know, sometimes it was maybe 3 days a week you'd go out for an hour.
Yeah.
And
If they had water shortage, you didn't get a shower for a couple of days.
Right.
You looked up pretty right on the block.
yeah. Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And then you got other ones that just didn't want to shower. And then you got a real right on the block.
Yeah.
Yeah, we have quite a few of them, especially the shoe unit. That's what we call
Security housing
them.
unit.
Yeah, and I'll tell you what, some of them, man, you gotta take them out, hose them down. The smell. It's
I
nasty.
figure especially over there it'd be so hot anyway, you know, I mean.
Yeah, and house and special housing, we had one we just called Shit Boy. He knew when we were coming together, he just brought himself all over.
Oh, so nasty.
Strip himself down, butt ass naked, just rub shit all over himself. And then we gotta go in and get him. I'm like, God, this sucks.
They had a guy here that, he ended up in the psych ward and he would actually, he would take his feces and make it into a sandwich.
Oh, yeah. Yep.
They put it between two loaves of white bread and.
What?
Oh, yeah.
That was a very common thing in the early 1900s.
That's
in the United
crazy.
States.
Why?
Yep.
So why would that happen?
I mean, that's a good question.
They're just
Like what?
crazy.
He said there was a guy in the psych ward
That
that
has never come
he
to my mind.
took
That's
it
my life.
and made it into a sandwich. And he took 2 pieces of white bread and ate it.
Ew.
That's what I'm saying.
You watch a lot of, you listen a lot
He
of
said
podcasts.
Sure.
there was
You ever
one
hear
where he
Tom
was
Suck? The guy Tom
a
Suck,
guy would,
that's his podcast.
No.
Do you follow like
rub his
serial
shit all
killers
over
or
himself,
I just
like everywhere.
And stuff.
Well,
So they had to go in and get him.
Fish.
That's weird.
Oh, Albert Fish, yeah.
Yeah, he's killed like 427 people. Like the boogeyman, that's what this. The boogeyman was based on this man.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's unreal the stuff this guy did and got away. Like they arrested him 5 times and let him go every time.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh, you gotta listen to it because the guy that does it really gets into the stories and the details. He researched this for like
How heavy are
15
these
years.
doors?
You know, he's got every
They
it's
pretty heavy?
cool.
Oh yeah, they are.
Yeah, but yeah, we were on a road trip down to Kentucky, and we listened to that thing on the way to Kentucky. Ever since then, I don't
Dave.
peanut butter or Greek
Dave.
cider.
Clear how heavy these are.
Oh, I
I
know.
haven't touched it since.
It's
Yeah.
wild stuff.
But that's what, I didn't know that, but back in the late 1890s or early 1900s in America, that was a common thing for the upper class. They would drink their urine, supposedly something in the ammonia would purify your system. I'm like, no.
Right.
Yeah, I don't care what you're crazy.
We'll be back in this place August 28th. We'll be here.
I've never been down. Never even crossed my mind. Back in Austin.
Well, as small as these cells are, you remember earlier I did mention that in the 20s, 30s, and 40s, they had over 2,700 inmates.
Yep.
In those days, they had 2 bunks and they put 3 men in these.
Jesus.
2 bunks and a mattress on the floor.
Yep. New boy gets.
Heck,
I don't think so.
us 3 barely fit in one. Could you just imagine?
Me and Marshall barely fit in one.
Now in the 80s, they turned this into segregation. That was a lockup unit, 1 man per cell, 22.5 hours a day. Breakfast, lunch, and dinners fed to them on plasticware through the bean holes at the bottom. This is the most dangerous part of the officer's job, coming up here to feed them or give them meds. They had to wear riot gear, helmet with a face shield, 50-pound lead flak vest, because they're constantly having hot water, cold water, spitfire, urine, vomit, feces, and blood slung in their face. Of course, it was disgusting. It's very scary, though, too, when you remember some of these guys had full-blown AIDS, HIV, hepatitis, and syphilis, and they knew it. That's just how careless the inmates were. knowing that they're throwing that in the officer's face when they have a family to go home to. If you worked North Hall in 1987, you would have been paid around $8 an hour, and you had virtually no benefits at all.
No.
Very special breed of people that could do it. Thankfully there are. But another big problem here was understaffing. Not hard to figure out why. This was chaos in here. Very stressful environment, very difficult environment to try and control. Well, that door needs some oil. These inmates were allowed tobacco, so they would they could have matchbooks. They would smoke. They would light toilet paper, trash, clothing, bedding, TVs, plastics on fire. There were so many fires in North Hall. The ceiling fans are still covered in soot, just to give you an idea. These guys, I mean, you could come in at 3 in the afternoon and it would sound the same way at 3 in the morning. It's very, very noisy. You got radios and TVs blaring, guys screaming, hooping, hollering, banging on the walls, doors, and floors around the clock. The sewage in here, an inmate could be laying on his bunk and the raw sewage of the guy above him is dripping on his chest. If you flushed your commode, whatever was in that commode would end up at the sink of the next cell down, and then the next, and then the next. So if an inmate didn't like his neighbor, all he had to do is let whatever was in his toilet stew all day and flush it on him that night when he's brushing his teeth. Yep. Think how disgusting that would be.
Yeah.
Rats in here, we're not missing any meals. They're very healthy meat eaters. They're 2 or 3 pounds a piece. They crawl out these commodes. One inmate said he was using his bathroom and he felt something down there. It was a rat peeking his head through. And I'd say he jumped up pretty quick. The roaches in here sometimes would be 3 to 4 inches long. They also very healthy. They'd go flying around. They'd land on people. One officer said the roaches were so big you could put a saddle on them. It was crazy. But really just wild, you know, really wild. These guys were locked down with a 2-stage lock, which was state of the art in the 20s when they put it in, but they used it even in 95. Halfway down, you got a key lock, takes a crutch key. Second stage is the steel bar up top. It goes from one end to the other, and that's called the slam bar. That's where you get the phrase the slammer. So if you wanted to let just number 11 out, the officer would come up, unlock that key lock, secure themselves at the cage at the end. This is operated by manpower. You move that handle, this guy could open up his cell, but every other door would still be key locked halfway down. So it's more time consuming, but a lot of COs preferred it because it was very secure and it was foolproof compared to the electric cells. Yep. Prone to malfunctioning and breaking down. So still works to this day. It's not half bad. 1921, 22, somewhere in there. So. That's right.
Does it sound like our feet right now, but no one's walking.
Now, for the most part, these guys were just allowed like a black felt tip marker to do their artwork. Number 9 is an excellent example of that with all the personality in it. That was Danny Alexander's cell. He was better known as Scrappy here in the penitentiary. When he got here, he was 19. He had an 11-year sentence for attempted murder charge. But he has since been released on parole, and he actually lives in Moundsville. Last time he had the Facebook. But you never know, you may bump into him later. But he was a tattoo artist in the penitentiary. We have one of his khakis in the museum. It's got all the drawings all over it. It was like his walking billboard showing his tattoo designs and things like that. So, but he loved his rock and roll country music, everything from Leonard Skinner and who was it? Hank Williams, David Allan Coe, Guns N' Roses, Led Zeppelin, Pink Floyd, The Doors. Pretty good music.
There it is. This.
Not bad. I can't argue with the man.
Or that.
Actually, a couple of years ago, Hulu was here, and they filmed a Stephen King series here called Castle Rock. Yep, it's produced by J.J. Abrams.
Scrap.
Matter of fact, if you watch it, Phil Skarsgård, the guy that played Pennywise the Clown, he was one of them, number 9.
It was good.
Yeah. Yeah, you'll recognize a lot of the prisoners. They done the place some justice because it looked really nice, you know. It was, now there's also a triangular hole in the wall between 8 and 9.
I just seen
I
it.
think they used a hacksaw blade to cut that out. A lot of times guys would do that, passing dope or shanks from one guy to the next.
What are you talking?
There's
It's
a
a-
hole in
yeah.
the wall in there.
Oh.
Now that particular one though, if you see where it's positioned and how smooth it is, come up with your own conclusion what it was used for.
Extracurricular.
They like
Yeah.
to watch TV together.
Yeah. They play cards.
Yes.
Go fish.
I had a lady a couple years ago on tour. She went in there and she's rubbing her finger around the hole, and she's looking at me while she's doing this, and she was so astonished. And while she was doing it, she looked at me, she said, "That is so smooth."
And you didn't have the heart to tell her, did you?
Well, all I said was, I said they preferred it that way. Yeah, I just left it at that.
She never caught it, did she?
I don't think she did. So,
Yeah.
big thing these guys are doing here is make weapons, and they can, like we said earlier, make a weapon out of anything. Now, number 8, this is an excellent example. If you follow my finger, you'll see that line that runs all the way down. This is scoring. This was done with dental floss and toothpaste. They coat dental floss with toothpaste or scouring powder as their abrasive. And they set in here and just use it like a saw, back and forth, back and forth. They get that thin enough, they could actually snap it off by hand and sharpen it on the floor into a shank. The floor of number 8 is covered with sharpening marks to give you a better idea. But usually they would do that process either on the door panels like that or sometimes the sides of beds as well. But, I mean, they find shanks in here on a daily basis, and to give you a better idea, we still find shanks in the penitentiary. So, and we play for keeps too, so I got a nice little collection at home. You never know what you'll find in this place. It's wacky, so.
Yep. They know the place better than you'll ever know it.
Yep.
We need to find a shank.
I agree.
keep it as history.
Number 5 has original
Keep it as a
plumbing
trigger
from the
object.
20s when they put it in. It was all porcelain.
I want to get that marking on the floor.
That's crazy.
Number
That's from
3,
the sharpening markings.
the ADA compliance cell. That was wheelchair cell. Now you imagine turning a chair around at something that small. Well, I was told the last guy that was in there, his name was Anthony, and he was only here for a few years, but on his last day in the prison, supposedly he left his chair in there and he walked out the front door. He moved down to Fairmont. Oh, shit, that's an awesome one. Yeah. So,
Hey, it kept them safe, I'm sure.
How would you even turn?
We can't get upstairs.
It's on the other side.
Is it? Oh yeah, it is. I see it now.
The cafeteria area. Bright in here.
Now this would have been their day room for North Hall, so this is where North Hall officers would have ate their meals. They prepare, well, at least at the tables, I should say.
Record for
But this
a couple
also where they
minutes. I need
prepared
to-
inmate meals. They would take their food cart down to the dining hall, load it up. Then they'd put all the plasticware on these tables. A lot easier and safer for them to prepare those inmate meals in this area. Most all the inmates in North Hall, when they were taken out for rec, they would have been sent down through the door at the end of the block. 2 square windows in the fence cage, and right here, this is strip search area. So you would have, basically an inmate would come up, they would derobe, hand their clothing and their footwear through to an officer, they'd search the clothes. While another officer conducts the search, they'd have them open their mouth, wiggle their tongue, if they had dentures, remove dentures, shake their hair several times, arms straight in the air, turn slowly, bend over and cough. These guys are bringing great guys in here in freaky ways. Everything from, bags of narcotics, to shanks. Matter of fact, Bruce White is a convicted murderer. Last I heard, he's still at Mount Olive. I guess he's going to die there. They brought him in off the yard one day, and when he was being strip searched the second time, they found he had a loaded Derringer in his record. So it gives you an idea, how desperate some of these guys were, knowing that the gun could have went off. That also shows you also why it's so very important for them to search them very frequently and thoroughly like that. But they bring them in. After they were strip searched, they'd set the inmates down at the tables until they had 4 inmates ready to be showered in the shower cage there. Of course, it doesn't look like a shower at home, doesn't operate like a shower at home. The only plumbing in there is a 1/4 inch pipe that runs across the top of the fence with a very small stream of water down. Now, temperature and pressure of the water was controlled by COs. So, you remember back when they're getting fed breakfast that day, they're getting feces and everything thrown in their face.
Well.
Now when they get showered, there's some payback.
Yep, all cold.
Yep. Maybe they get lathered up and they shut the water off on them. So you can use your imagination with that one. Where we came from was B block. You got 80 cells. Then you got another 80 on A block, which is street side. So it gives you an idea of kind of the way everything's laid out in here. So Y'all have any questions so far?
What was the guard to prisoner ratio? Pretty high, 200 to 1 probably.
I would say at least, yeah. It was very, very bad. Matter of fact, well, for example, in general population down in Newell, there was years they had almost 600 inmates living in there, and on a good day, maybe 4 officers. So that would be, what, maybe 150 to 1, something like that. It's crazy. And then the South Yard, you could have around 300 inmates out there with 1 officer watching. You know, just with a radio, and that's it.
Yeah.
Of course, they're
Well, you
relying-
don't want no weapons. You
Right.
don't want no weapons in a situation like that.
Yeah, but yeah, because they're relying on the tower officers, you know, to
Yep.
watch their back and pray to God they're a good shot if they had to be. And
Hopefully, if you owe that tower guy money, you already paid him twice.
yeah. What was that? Well, the only area that also would have firearms in the penitentiary would be somewhere like in a tower or behind like one of those fences. No, yeah, no one wanted to do it, that was the problem. I mean, like I say, I understand the big problem there, we're ready to go.
I don't think it was upstairs. I thought it was all the way down. I don't think it was
down there.
I don't think it was on the second floor.
No, all the way down there.
But they had a guards union here, but still though, you know, the problem was, it wasn't just, you know, this whole place, it wasn't just bad for inmates, it's bad for officers too, because it's a dangerous working environment. Because of the, you know, the slipshod conditions here, and, you know, locks that, you know, if you pull the door hard enough, you could jam it open, and inmates sometimes knew more about the operation of, you know, like this key goes here and this key goes here. Sometimes they knew more about it than the officers did. You know, not every officer, again, was qualified for a weapon, but the officers that were are using weapons like in our museum, which are, you know, almost 100 years old, some of it. You know, they didn't feel the weapons were reliable, they didn't feel confident in their training to use the weapons, or any of their training for that matter. You know, so it was just really a big, you know, a lot of alcoholics from this place. Because, you know, I mean, sometimes people, this was the main source of employment for some people, and
Probably a lot of corruption too.
oh, I'm sure, yes, you know, and so, I know one of the officers that was here, Lieutenant Littell, when he started here in the early 70s, the day he came to be interviewed, right after his interview was done, he started, that same day. They gave him a uniform, a set of keys, they assigned him to a post, and he said he was somewhere in the prison, he had a group of inmates that he was escorting somewhere, and he pulls his keys out, and he's looking, fumbling through his keys, because he had just started. And he's trying to figure out which key goes to this door so the inmates can continue moving through. He said when an inmate came up to him from behind, said, no, you need this key right here. And he said he started thinking to himself, what did I get myself signed up for, you know? But again, yeah, I mean, it was just, you know, it was a place that they, you know, just, my buddy Chop used to be an officer here from 86 to 95. And he told me, he said he dreaded it every day getting up coming to work here, but he knew he had to. I mean, because after he got started here 2 or 3 years in, well, now he's knee deep, and, you know, he was working at the steel mill, but it closed down. So it just, you know, once you get to a point, you get so far into a career like this, I mean, it's just kind of like, you know, too late to turn around now.
It's like quicksand.
Yeah,
Yep.
yeah.
It draws you right in.
So, but
Yep.
I know for a fact though that the Department of Corrections, had they had better help from the state, they would have definitely had more improvements made here across the board. But certainly with staffing, you know. So that's why when the '86 riot kicked off, they were so understaffed that particular night. The captain, the watch commander, Captain Glasscock, he was handing out silverware in the dining hall. That's how understaffed they were. The supervisor was doing that. So, crazy stuff, you know, it's just crazy, but pretty wacky. So, when they would go out to train you, if you were qualifying to use a 12-gauge shotgun, they took you out to the range out here on 12th Street. They'd give you 2 or 3 shotgun shells, and they would ask you, do you see that hillside over there? Yeah. Shoot the hillside 3 times. The shotgun. I mean,
You're certified, yeah.
right. And they say, okay, here you go, good deal, you know, let's bring you back, you know. Actually, Chuck, guy who's officer here, he told me that one day he went to qualify for a 357 side on him. And he said that, you know, they take a few of the prison cars out there because they got, you know, different people from the administration and different officers going to qualify all on the same day. And he said when he went to the car to get his pistol out, they had brought along a trustee inmate to help him. And he took the, he walked up to the car and the trustee is sitting in the car polishing the revolver and handed it to him. So, I mean, wow. Yeah.
Yeah,
So-
a little sketchy.
A little sketchy, yeah. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Y'all have any questions at this point?
Nope.
All right, we'll continue into the administration building over here. When you go through the doorway, just watch your step.
Yeah, I might go the right way this time.
Up above us would have been the warden's home and offices to give you orientation of where we're at. Now, the immediate area we like to call
Oh,
the
shit,
wheel.
I got a shadow right there.
It's basically an old-fashioned revolving door. It's from 1894. They operated it by hand until around 1899. They put a trolley car motor on it, ran on cloth belts on the spindle up top. But the wheel and the north wagon gate were the main entrance and exit ways in and out for anyone and everyone for most of the years. As a matter of fact, there's only 2 of these on Earth. The other one is still in operation in Manchester, England, at Strange Ways Prison, believe it or not. But kind of half revolving door, half sally port in a way. And because of that, it doubled as an extra layer of security, keeping inmates over here and of course away from the front doors and the warden upstairs and his family. It was controlled by an armed officer in the cage behind it who could stop it in any one of 4 directions, leading in as it is now or leading out to the right or to the left. To the right of the wheel, this was payroll and processing, and then on the left, that was the original non-contact visitation, and they used that till the early 80s when they phased it out and put it in the lobby. So, now about 5 years ago or so, Netflix was here. They filmed a Netflix original series called Mindhunter. If you like Criminal Minds, you probably get a kick out of Mindhunter. It's about FBI profilers. Early on in season 1, I believe it was the Ed Kemper episode, you'll see shots of the wheel and other familiar sites here in prison. So, the 2 rooms over here was the U.S. Post Office. On the other side, you had a commissary and a barber shop. The barber was a trusted inmate, but he was a convicted murderer. Since 25 years, he wouldn't just cut inmate officers here. Even the public was allowed to come in, and they said they were 1990s. And they bring their kids in, they bring the whole family in. The barber.
I am. That's crazy.
Well, he was an model inmate. He made parole, moved down to Houston, and that's where he's got a shop open.
It's all the way back here. It's all the way back here.
Room, filing cabinet.
But it's definitely safe if you want to step on it.
Bathroom.
If you like to, but, matter of fact, if it wasn't padlocked, you could still spin on it. There's bearings downstairs that grease that pretty good. Honestly, it is, isn't it?
Yeah, simple. It's a simple concept. Yeah.
Yep. That's why I've always said that to me, it's strange. It seems like the, security they had here in the 1890s was better than what they had in the 1990s. You know, I mean, but again, going back to,
Yeah. Because
Like
look
I say,
at the
the-
thickness of the steel in there. I mean, you're not gonna cut through that.
no, no, not at all. Not at all. So,
Yeah, that's pretty cool.
definitely effective. Matter of fact, in 1970, there's a movie called Fool's Parade with James Stewart, George Kennedy, Kurt Russell, Strother Martin, and Baxter filmed here. You can find that movie on YouTube. Literally the very first opening scene of Fool's Parade, it shows James Stewart spinning on the wheel walking out of the prison. So, Pretty cool stuff, but all kinds of Hollywood action. Yeah. But we'll get ready to head down to the area below us in the basement, which is the hole, and that is solitary.
Good visit, RD. Whew. Feels good out here. Watch your step when you're coming down here. Just saying, Dave. Oh. Watch your head.
And when you go down here, just watch your step and watch your head.
It's dark down here.
I gotta show you something that I caught down here. I want to see if you can explain it to me.
Okay. What in the world, huh?
I don't know.
Well, that's not strange at all.
That just came out of nowhere.
Huh. Yeah. Well, honestly, I don't know. I mean, I can tell you, this is a very active area down here.
Oh, yeah.
A lot of people getting touched. A lot of battery drain, cameras, flashlights, cell phones, electronics, you name it.
Oh yeah, for sure.
You know, so it. I was gonna say, how you mentioned earlier your battery is 5%. I was gonna say, can't guarantee what's gonna happen after you walk out here.
It's dead.
Oh, really?
Well,
Yeah, this was from about the 1870s to around the mid-1950s. This was solitary confinement. They literally shackled them to the walls down here by the wrist, left it down here for a few days. Some guys were down here over a month. Even in broad daylight with the front doors closed, total darkness.
it's cold back
A
here.
lot of guys went blind, a lot of guys went crazy. One of the older officers told me he never used to be able to take a step anywhere down here and he was crunching on a road to an inside. Still to this day, after a good hard rain, we get a lot of flooding down here. Sometimes these guys are knee-high in water. So you can imagine how that would pretty much rot your feet and everything. Not too nice.
Not having parole and a new punishment.
Yes, absolutely. Now later on in the late 50s, when they finished the south end of the prison's construction, they moved solitary out and they put it into the new part of the prison. And this was all converted, kind of repurposed into a maintenance area boiler. They installed electricity and lights. And they had a trustee and maybe tried to.
Just watch that pro, Dave.
Yeah, Dave, don't fall.
Yeah, license.
Pull her.
Now, RD, we've got grass,
Goes on that.
corners, maintain the tool room and the maintenance office, things like that. But he actually lived in the room behind me, matter of fact. And amongst the inmates, he had a reputation as being the warden's favorite snitch. Now, on October 8, 1979, this was around midnight or so, Charlie Plants and Billy Cremines, they managed to gain access into the hole. They went into RD's room, or at the time he was using the restroom. They brutally murdered him. He laid down here until 6:30 or so in the morning. He missed the count. Officers come down. They found him in his room. They said his head was hanging on by about that much. He passed.
Feels weird already.
Hey, you telling me.
But like I say, this is a very weird area. It's a hot spot, as we call it, of concerned, flying paranormal activity. So, matter of fact, I think it was 10 o'clock towards day, and I had a guy in here in the that said he felt someone had touched him on his arm. So, the only difference between men and women is usually men tend to get touched on their arm or sides. The ladies who have like a finger on your face or neck or have your hair played with, and that's very, very common. So, sure enough, if I had a nickel for every time I've seen people react to being touched in here or having battery drain or something, I'd be a rich man, so.
No, this used to house women as well.
Yes, ma'am, until, 1947, the prison was co-ed. Now, at most, they had about 100 ladies here. When the ladies were
Any light?
here, well, they tried their best to keep them.
Alright guys, if you remember from our YouTube video, this is where our D was.
Where? Northeast corner, north yard, where the video now is. For that matter, though, they even house people
Cold in
down
here.
The youngest inmate I was ever able to discover.
RD, you wanna move your chair for us?
You shit.
I would.
You would think. Yeah, it's very strange. I actually met one of those guys. I met a 14-year-old.
I'll make sure I can
His
see.
name was Tommy Williams, and he got here in the 50s at age 14. He had murdered a Cub Scout friend of his. Not a Mexico friend, but anyway, when I met him, it was a couple of years ago. He was in the process of moving to Florida, and so he wanted to stop through and drop some pictures and stuff off to us. And I'm talking to him up in the lobby, not realizing who this guy is until after he left, which was kind of a bummer because I would have got stories from him. But yeah, the ladies, they moved in 1947 to Penn Springs to an institute for women. That's down there in Virginia. And one of the ladies, honestly, in my opinion, the most infamous inmate that was ever here was one of the ladies. Kathleen Maddox was her name. She was Charlie Manson's mom.
Really?
And yes.
What was she in for?
Her and his uncle Luther were both here for armed robbery. They robbed a gas station in Charleston back in like the 30s with a broken ketchup bottle.
Yep.
And got about 5 years here in the pen. Now, when they were locked up,
Over here.
Charlie was about 7 years old or something, but he's grown up with his Aunt Glennon McMeckin, which is just a few miles away. And he was here a lot as a kid visiting his mom. Matter of fact, there's a YouTube interview of him from San Quentin where they say, Charlie, what about your mother?
This is where RD was, Dave. RD, the trusted inmate.
Yeah.
The warden snitch. This is where he lived. He got killed right in that bathroom. This is where they say you feel things. Like you get touched or something.
In 1983, March of 83, he actually wrote a letter to Warden Donald Gordon.
This is his chair. This is his chair. I wouldn't go back here. Because I don't know what's back here.
Oh, yeah. When the ladies moved out, the building that they've been living in started being used for storage.
No.
20 years later, 1968, they had another riot here, and the inmates got tired. So we lost the female building up here. It's also when we lost their early records, the first 54 years of the operation here. So unfortunately, that's when, we can only assume, like the deaths from 1866 to 1920, because we lost them.
They're all wrong.
Yeah. Now then, from 1920 to 1995, just during the last 75 years, they had 998 documented deaths. 94 state-sanctioned executions fall into that. Between 45 to 50 murders, 45 to 50 suicides, and the rest attributed to natural death. Now here's the catch with that. Inmate suicide in a place like this, half the time is an inmate hanging in a stairwell or a cell. Well, they're found after the fact, in other words. The paperwork that they have to go through for a suicide looks like that, and the paperwork for a murder is like that. If you see what I mean. In other words, there may have been some suicides that were actually assisted, that were murders. It's speculative, it's very conceivable, but again, 998 deaths in 75 years. Alcatraz had 28 in 36 years.
Wow.
That gives you some perspective on it. Everyone talks about how rough Alcatraz was.
Yeah.
Not hardly.
Yeah.
They done easy time.
Yeah.
The Birdman and all this. So, but sure enough. But we'll get ready to migrate up to the medical floor up on the second floor. Again, the same thing in reverse. Just watch your steps, watch your head out there.
I'm sure we'll go to Sugar Shack. The place to last. At least I hope so.
And when you go up these stairs, just watch your step. They're in pretty bad shape up here.
Where was the wagon gate?
The wagon gate, that was actually the original prison. That was the oldest part. The first 100 or so guys that got here, they would be housed in there. And they were the ones that built this side.
Don't be surprised if there's what's up these stairs.
I actually have been told over the years that for some time, in the late 1860s, they housed some war criminals from the Civil War in there.
Right?
Now, I've never seen it in black and white, so I don't like to say that as, you know, true gospel, but I have heard that as a rumor over the years.
Right these? Yeah. It's hot up here. Alright. This is the hot area.
This,
This medical floor was put in 1972. The original infirmary would have been on the north yard in a building that's been torn down since. We have photos of it in the museum. They had 24/7 staff and nurses up here, doctors, optometrists, psychologists come in twice a week, or really 2 or 3 hours each visit, for a population never less than 650 inmates. So when the place closed, West Virginia Supreme Court said this was, quote, grossly inadequate health care. They done the best they could for what they, with what they had here for these guys. It didn't have long. A lot of times these guys would end up at the hospital over in Glendale.
same kind of law as well.
Yes. Those kind of slick looking.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah. They had, matter of fact, dental hygiene students from West Virginia State College coming in there.
We didn't get to go here.
We didn't get to go through half of this. Oh yeah, this is the dentist, remember?
Yeah.
Remember when that guy said he heard someone in there?
Yeah.
It's fucking hot up here. I'm gonna tell Marshall to dress me.
Yep, I was just checking it out.
That guy I mentioned earlier, he was the Avengers leader. He had phlebitis in his legs, so actually he partly lived up here because he needed so much treatment for him, his condition. But he actually had an alternative motive for painting these pictures up here. He had a crush on Terry. She was a nurse that worked up here, so kind of he liked to show off his talents for her. And, you know,
It's still.
I want to do it again. Huh?
He actually had an affair with Terry. That's kind of the idea of what's going on. But it didn't take long. Another inmate named James Hall discovered he's trying to have an affair. I don't know what it was for James, but he ratted Danny out. And Harry and Danny was up with some serious trouble. Well, it didn't take but a few days. Spider realized that James was the snitch. Don't take long to find out who. He had his ceremony.
Dark room.
But very, very talented guy. Like I mean, just speak for itself.
What was that?
They didn't always have something to use as a reference, like a
know.
postcard or a
Did you hear
magazine.
that?
So a lot of the paintings were done from their memory or their imagination.
Yeah, a lot of them look like the game news fronts.
I know.
Annual game news.
When we have to go, I lay it right here.
Hand out years ago.
There it was back in the late '70s, early '80s. That's what they look like, a lot of the game news front pamphlets.
Okay, maybe, well, hey, maybe that's what he was.
Just the detail on how they would always do them, that's what, it just sparked my memory a little bit there.
Well, no kidding, yeah. Very, yeah, definitely could have been. That's.
Bill, you
I don't know
know
what
the
that
game
was.
news books, the pamphlets they used to hand out all the time? Don't that look like the fronts of them?
Good.
Like the detail work?
Huh. Yeah, that was their pharmacy in there. During the '86 riot, they came up here. The first place they went to was the pharmacy, of course.
Well, they destroyed that room. Oh, yes. Yes, they did.
Yeah. So,
And after the riot was all over, you saw people, inmates throwing toilet paper and paper towels over the balcony, and it's a big mess.
yes, it was. Yes, sir, yeah, they tore the heck out of the place.
Yeah.
That's for sure.
That's where they dropped down on.
Bathroom.
Yeah.
Or was it the next room?
This one.
Now, this was the ward for the infirmary, so in here you'd have 20 or so beds. But when you go through the door behind me, you're entering into the psych unit. You're home, Bill.
Look at the chair. Two of them. Two chairs.
Four beds in here. Actually, these beds sometimes were used for four-pointing inmates, tying them down basically. Two officer workers for you. You got one in the infirmary, one inside. You also work side, you have a common because these guys are always being loose cramps. Sometimes they could get up and walk around with you. And sometimes the inmates would lose it, and the officer would wrestle the guy to the floor until the nurse could come out and give him a shot to put him down for the night. A lot of Thorazine and Halidol were used up here. A lot easier to medicate the guys and pretty much sedate them. A lot of cutters and self-mutilators were in here. Typically, you'd average 30, 35 inmates, and it had some really wacky things. The two most dangerous areas in the prison during modern times for the COs would have been North Hall and in here in the psych unit. We have a lot of officer assaults. One officer actually had a story of one officer had one of his ears ripped off.
Jesus.
A lot, broken noses, eye sockets, chunks bitten out of people, things like that. So, really nasty stuff in here. There's an inmate named Danny, who last I heard is still incarcerated at Mount Olive for murder. Danny was better known as Tree Man here, because what he would do is he would take his razor blade, and he liked to cut his throat. And he would cut his throat so many times over the years that the scar tissue on his neck was built up so thick it looked like tree bark. Something else he would do is he would take that razor and he would cut the bend of his arm, and he'd fold his arm up real tight, and he would look around for someone, usually an officer, to gross him out pretty much, get the reaction. And he'd say, "Hey, check this out." And he would pride himself on how far he could shoot the arterial blood spray, like target practice. So, yeah, wacky stuff. He would do that in his cell, shoot it about 10 feet out, and it'd bounce off the shower wall. John Devon was an inmate with a life sentence. He was in here one day, and he lost his mind. He went a little batty. And so all day, he's just saying the same thing over and over again. He's saying, "I'm leaving today, I'm leaving today, I'm leaving today." And we're like, "No, you're going to be here for a while. I'm leaving today." So finally, he asked the nurse for 2 pencils. And as soon as she gave him the pencils, he gouged his eyes out. Now, apparently when he done that, his head kind of moved, or he flinched, and when that happened, actually one of his eyes fell out.
Ooh.
So, and he survived that, but he was transferred that evening to the former state hospital in Weston, West Virginia. Nowadays it's called the Trans-Allegheny Lunatic Asylum.
Oh, I've heard that.
Yes.
That was a very good resource.
Yes, yeah. He was transferred there, and that's where he was after he left here, so. But sure enough, but that gives you a couple examples of the mentality of the inmates that were up here, and some pretty mixed up individuals, so. I'm asked very frequently about the Pepto-Bismol pink that was put in because they felt that was a common color to the inmates.
Okay,
I
yeah.
don't think it was all right to that, but
Yeah. To me, I think it would drive me crazy.
Yeah. So,
Now, when you come through, the first room on your right has 2 psych cells. That's basically suicide watch. Kind of similar to rubber rooms. There's the only thing in those cells is a drain and a shower head. The little panel outside the door, they could hook a water hose up to it and basically shove water into the cell if they were playing with their excrements and things like that. Across the hall in the room with the windows was observation room for psych inmates. Room here, actually 2 rooms. That would have been one-on-one, so that would have been for inmates that needed to have a staff with them at all times. That's what they call one-on-one staff inmate ratio. Now, actually, the room in there, that was a Alcoholic and Narcotics Anonymous meeting room, which has always been strange to me that they had no windows. You'd think they'd like windows to allow sunlight into those meetings, but, well, I don't know, I guess they figured they didn't want alcoholic inmates having access to natural light. I know that's cheesy. Natty light, natural light.
Natty light.
I got a bunch of dad jokes.
Nowadays.
Y'all have any questions so far?
No.
From here, we got a couple more spots for our grand finale here. So from here, we're going to head down to the south yard to the general population side.
I know what the grand finale is.
New wall.
No. He's going towards the door. Oh, chapel.
New wall.
Yeah. Look what's out here. There's Marshall's Chapel, Dave.
Yeah, that's the same.
Oh.
They still have the bus. They transport the inmates in the bus.
Yeah.
Was hiding shanks in the yard.
You can really see night and day difference with this side compared to the north side, how this is built with machine cut stone by contractors. Big difference. But this yard, this is general population. So this is mainline yard. Some days 200-300 inmates out here with 1 yard officer watching them. Entire officers had the long rifles, 308, 30-30s, things like that to watch these guys. But these guys had this whole yard to entertain themselves with, as you can tell. Everything is original except for the, the school bus and the obstacle course, which are here for training now. The only 2 buildings that were structures that were built by inmates on the south yard were the All Faith Chapel and the bathrooms. Now the chapel's built around 1977. Local churches donated $20,000. Christian inmates came up with the rest of the money. They pitched in and built their All Faith Chapel. Even had some weddings in there. They bring in the local churches sometimes to have church service with the inmates as well. So, number of services each week for these guys. Protestant Catholic services, as well as Hindu and Muslim services. And we understand probably about 5% of the guys here were into the creepy stuff. Now, very much to Reverend Payne's dismay, even the Satan worshipers were allowed to use the same chapel the Christians built. Yep. So they had some drama about that back in the 80s.
Oof.
Now, when the inmates built the bathrooms, they built the walls from the floor to the ceiling. They put 2 doors on it. The problem with that is they built a very, very private bathroom in the middle of a maximum security prison yard. You can figure that out. Anything they didn't want to get caught doing happened in there. A lot of stabbings, rapes, and assaults and beatings, nasty stuff. The final straw was an attack on an inmate named Mark Root. He was over in the corner where the stall now is. He was running his mouth to a couple inmates that, weren't having it that day. By the time the inmates were done with Mark, his head looked like ground beef. I've seen the crime scene photos. It's pretty gnarly looking. He had to have reconstructive surgery on his head. It's a miracle he even survived.
Jesus.
Now, I've heard as recent as 3 years ago, Mark was still incarcerated at Northern Correctional, and he's still running his mouth. So he hadn't learned his lesson.
I was just gonna say, you definitely didn't learn it.
And after that, the walls came down. So, just to improve visibility for everyone. So in other words, if y'all need to use the bathroom, we'll just stare at the center wall for you. But, although I would not recommend it. The basement on this side of the prison is a full-size basement. That's really where the haunted house attraction's located. And down there is a indoor recreation room that they use for these guys. It's called the Sugar Shack. And we'll actually get ready to head down there now. And just same thing like earlier, just watch your step when we go down there and watch your head. There's actually gonna be 2 sets of steps.
Oh, boy.
And the whole way down, you gotta watch your head, so.
This one gives me the creeps.
This is when I
No, you don't.
It's creepy when you're down here all by yourself, and then you hear a loud bang. Me, my brother, which is this one, and one of our friends run out of here.
Oh yeah, it was loud.
Looks like they already turned the lights off too, so it's nice and creepy.
Cause we heard 3 knocks with her in here, so then our friend Morris said he ain't gonna acknowledge it. Next thing you know, there's a loud bang, and we were out of here.
Wow.
Oh gosh. Let's go to where it was, Mike.
Keep it nice and dark for us, get the nice spooky ambiance.
I was sitting here.
There's,
There was a table.
come here, come over here. See? They got it taped off now.
That's always been picked on.
This was the Sugar Shack, as it was called, kind of like a pool hall. They had pool tables, ping pong tables, couches, arcade games, even a bowling machine for a while. They had different colored light bulbs in here, kind of gave it a second.
Back here.
They painted this room, as you can tell.
Like, slow down.
Everything is original in the artwork, except for the real proof looking images that looks like Mom fans painted on the walls. When MTV was here, they done that without permission.
This right here.
Yep.
So no thanks to MTV. Problem was, you got all these blind spots in here with these columns. It's very dangerous for an officer to be in here. If an officer was in here, they'd be unarmed, by themselves, with upwards of 100 inmates for a couple hours. Because of how sketchy it was, half the time, officers would just not come in here. They would walk in after the inmates left and make sure there was nothing.
It was right here.
left behind.
I was standing right here
That is why the inmates call it the Sugar
when I heard the 3 knocks.
A lot of consensual and non.
The bang came from back here.
It was on that board.
Yeah. Michael, look at this pillar.
When I have the kids on board.
Turn your light on, look at the
A
pillar.
little bit, and I tell them that, they said it was a sweet place. to
3
live.
fucking marks. And I was standing next to that.
It is part of the haunted house during October. You'll notice on the other wall, we have a lot of haunted house props. We just moved all that stuff over to the other side just to kind of get it out of the way. But this is another hot spot of paranormal activity.
Yeah.
Usually each year or every other year, we have 1 or 2 haunted house actors that quit on us because they'll be in here in the fog and they'll see a shadow move through the fog. Well, as soon as they get into position to scare who they think is the next group of people, they realize there's no one there. And a lot of them are high schoolers that we get to work the haunted house, and so it freaks them out and they can't handle it. But we do get a lot of shadow activity in here, physical contact as well, and I can personally attest to that.
Yep.
Several months ago, we were, me and my buddies, well, my former coworkers that worked here, we were down here. We have a YouTube channel that we were filming for, and I was standing right in this area, and I had my left arm out, and I was going to grab something out of my pocket when all of a sudden I felt the sensation that felt just like fingertips, like tickling my fingers. And it wasn't an external sensation. It was literally, I could feel fingertips. And I won't repeat what I said, but, you know, freaked out a little bit.
I know what you said. Don't worry.
I went upstairs and I changed my pants. I had skid marks, so, but yeah. So in other words, like I say, I can definitely tell you just from personal experience, it is a weird area in here.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is.
So, it's weird.
Have you guys done the Halloween thing?
We never done that. We came to it, but we never done it. But we did a ghost hunt here with Ghost Nat. They held a public one, and we were down here just by ourselves. And over by that table over there, I heard with my own ears, I heard 3 knocks, and I was like, okay. And then all of a sudden, we heard a loud bang come from the back of the room. So we were like, nope, we ran out of here.
Yeah, it's a weird area, that's for sure. Actually, in August of '82, they realized what inmates have been doing. They've been having their female visitors smuggling 1-ounce bags of marijuana for them. They flushed it down the commode upstairs because they knew the plumbing came down in the southwest corner of the room in here. Well, after their visit was done, they had their buddies come down and take the elbow off the pipe and they get their weed out that way. So if there's a will, there's a way.
Yep. I told him.
Sure enough. But, y'all have any questions?
Nope.
Alright, well, this time usually I like to say we got a grand finale in store. Our final stop is New Walls. That's the housing unit for general population inmates. Once we get up there, we'll do a little something to help round out your trip to prison today and make it more official. So, we won't give it away just yet.
Hey, there's a glow stick.
You know, in the gift shop, there were those prints of the paintings that one guy.
Of the what?
Yes.
Yes. Yes.
Boy, was he talented.
Yes, ma'am, he was. Billy Foster was his name. And
Shut
he
up.
was here for a total of 28 years. Matter of fact, when he got here, he was here for 3 different times, but 28 years collectively. His first time he got here, he was 18. It was for a robbery charge. He behaved and made parole, and later he came back for larceny, and then he made parole. But then his third and final charge, he came back for manslaughter. And
What was it?
what happened was he got home one night, and Billy found his best friend and wife together. Well, they got into a fight. He pulled a gun out, and they struggled over the gun. It went off and killed a friend. So he was here until the 90s or so when he was released on parole, and then in 05 he passed away from cancer. But in each one of those pencil sketches that you were looking at, in each one of them, he said that he hit a joint in each one. Yeah, so that's like a little Easter egg. That he, some of the best artwork. I mean, I don't know. I mean, I'm very envious of people that have that level of talent.
And he was self-taught, just natural talent.
Honestly, I think so. I believe, if I'm not mistaken, I believe he was.
He got in when he was 18. I'm guessing probably.
Yes. If you get close to the wall in here, just realize there is a drain there, so just be careful so you don't twist your ankle. Which, by the way, if you watch Lion Country or Castle Rock, will recognize this side of New Wall. They filmed a lot in here. They were the ones that painted this all gray to get the look they wanted. But you got 160 cells on this side, you got another 160 over on street side. Some of these were 1-man, some were 2-man cells. Behind the wall in the middle is their gang shower, as it was known. And they could shower as many as 9 at a time. There's an audience upstairs.
This how I got on?
What?
So is this how I got on?
Who's down there? There's names. This one's colorful.
Actually, that's the original. Believe it or not, it's a 11-inch General Electric color television.
And they have to buy it from a certain company to bring them into the prison. Yeah, so their services will hide nothing inside the TVs and all that shit. It's crazy.
Yeah. Fort High School or something.
Look at the little TV.
so I remember them little things. I had one.
It's probably a TV prop.
You didn't find it funny, did you?
Yeah. The little 13-inch TV in there.
Now, I always tell people that no trip to prison will be official without a lockdown. For anyone that wants to get locked into a cell and experience that, you're going to have an opportunity. I can accommodate you. The only cells that I lock people in is cell 1, 2, 4, 5, and 6. So 1, 2, 4, 5, and 6. Now what's going to happen is you're going to end up ringing a bell a few times. When the bell rang 3 times, that was a signal to the inmates about to get locked in. They're told to basically stand at the back of the cell all the way to be locked in. So I'll demonstrate that, but before anything happens, I'll give you heads up first so you're ready to anticipate it. And again, if you want to go in, you're more than welcome to get locked in. So just give me a moment and we'll do a little lockdown.
Heck with it. Get in here. We all ain't gonna fit.
Then we have to stay out here, too.
No, come in. Unless you want squished by the door.
No.
We're getting locked in.
It's a goal, Molly.
Nah.
All right, here we go. Y'all ready?
Yep.
Yeah.
Oh shoot. We're locked in.
Well,
Get comfy.
I won't be the last time.
I'd break that thing if I sat on it. You wanna fight?
Yeah, Sam, there's a little hole over your wall.
Okay.
that's so weird.
Could you imagine? being
Probably won't be
in
my
here?
last time.
I was gonna say I'm open for arrangements.
Could you imagine being locked in here though?
No.
For however many hours of the day?
Oh, it'd be tight even too.
Now, did the cars lift up? Can you fold those up during the day?
Usually most of them do.
I think it's heavy.
Yeah, they are. Well, they had to hold someone.
Yeah.
Someone, too, is 300 or 400 pounds.
They say your neighbor's all easy.
I won't trust you.
No,
I ain't got
I
anything.
They do that at prison break. Well, prison break,
That's the best kind of prison to come to is right here. Because if you get locked in, you don't gotta worry about spending years in there. Which is most important at the end of the day, you get to go home to friends and family. All right, if y'all ready, I'll let you back out to freedom.
Okay.
Well, I'll stay.
That's why doors don't open.
Now, wait a minute, I must be having a fire alarm on number 5.
Oh god.
Now wait a minute. Let me look into this. I'm sure there's something I could do. Last time this happened to me, it took me 4 hours.
Did you say don't use number 5?
Let me see here. I don't know. Let me try something. Nope, that's not it.
Yeah, there.
Hey, I can't help it. Sometimes I gotta have that fun.
Can you imagine, I think I'd be better off in one cell instead of 2 or 3.
Yeah.
Oh, there was 3 in that.
Yeah, we did 3.
See, now all you got to do to really round your trip out and make it extra official is right in the lobby. You get a mug shot there at the poster. You pull the number card off. You get one to the front. You turn, you get your profile to the side. It makes a wonderful Christmas card for your families. So I want to thank y'all again for coming out. Hope you enjoyed the tour of the penitentiary. Please tell your friends and family about us. We've got something for everybody here. Variety of day tours, evening, night tours. We've got an escape room. Our website is wvpentours.com. We're on social media, Google reviews, and TripAdvisor. And a little shameless plug, if you're into the paranormal, get on YouTube some night. If you're bored, you want to pop some popcorn, check out Paranormal Quest. Me and some of my former co-workers here, we make full-length documentaries on the paranormal. So, little shameless plug for you.
I've watched a good bit of them.
Oh, really?
Yep.
Oh, okay. Well,
I have.
there you go. Well, we appreciate you watching
No
this.
problem.
So, but sure enough, we'll head back Main Street to the lobby and get y'all paroled. And also, if you go out through the lobby before I can get out there, don't freak out. We're the last people in the prison, so the front gate is locked. Just give me a second, I'll go out and unlock it for you.
Yeah, I was kind of confused there.
Good old Sparky. There's the front of it.
Hey, so what's with the bullet hole?
That wasn't creepy at all. Wow, okay.
What's with the bullet hole?
So actually what really happened there is whoever put that water cool machine gun up there, they didn't realize how heavy it was.
And it fell
So they said
forward.
they kind of done that to him, and the barrel just hit that glass. It'd make for a good story if I was to say, oh, you know, I mean, I could come up with a good story for him.
No, we'll let MTV.
That's right, that's right.
Them 30 cows ain't light. The old ones more. Those that have 1919, those some bitches are heavy.
Yeah, I think that one, I think it's maybe a Colt. If I'm not mistaken, I think.
It was one of the originals,
Oh,
so
man.
they're heavy as shit, yeah.
Yeah, it actually needs cleaned. We just recently, me and my friend Ward, we cleaned our guns in there, and now, you know, like 3-in-1 oil and stuff like that, and I wanted to clean that.
I'll get a picture of these.
I haven't had enough time yet.
Little video of these.
The nice thing about that, it's all big parts. You can't go wrong. You know, I mean, it's kind of like that. Right, they're not bad. That whole big thing on the front is not more water jacket. They'll come right off.
These are all Billy Foster's drawings.
Yeah,
Yeah.
a pencil. And
Could you imagine?
they use pencil and they use coal.
30-06 caliber, remember? Yeah, that's just right. It's,
What's the mask over the face?
Yes, it was, yes.
Alrighty, guys. Well, that was the end of our tour. Be sure to check it out on our video. Be sure to check out our Instagram and everything. It should be uploaded in a couple of days. Once again, thank you all for watching, and can't wait for August 28th for you guys to see our investigation here. But thanks also. Thank you guys for watching. Y'all have a good one.